Welcome to Whiskey Gaming, and this is my lit review of Senua's Saga Hellblade II. I play on the Xbox Series X, it's also available on the Series S and PC. Let's get into the story, and you can get a lovely recap of the first game at the beginning of this game, but in this game, you once again play as Senua. This time, she's been taken captive by another tribe and is being transported across the sea along with a bunch of other slaves. Fortunately for her, I guess, there's a storm and she gets shipwrecked and wakes up upon the beach of a somewhat distant land. It's still very, very Norse. This kicks off her journey and she discovers the land is threatened by the Draugr, and not just the Draugr, but giants. Senua discovers that her unique gifts and, well, her psychosis could actually be of benefit to these people. So her and her friends she meets along the way, well, they team up to see if they can save the land. And I'm gonna say, I enjoyed the story. I don't feel that it hit the notes quite as hard as the first game, especially revolving around Senua's psychosis. It feels toned back. You still get all the different voices, you still get to see what she's experiencing, and maybe it is kind of important and better because she's now learning to live with it. It just didn't feel like it hit the same as in the first game. I will say the rest of the story is interesting, it's pretty cool, but it does kind of feel rushed. You feel like you blow through this game pretty quickly. Like once it starts moving, it just keeps moving and moving and moving and then it's done. And it feels like it could have been a bit longer, honestly. Let's get into the audio, and the voiceover work is amazing in this game. I think it's incredibly well done. All the different characters, the voices in Senua's head, all of them are so very well done that it's kind of awful at the same time when you've got the headphones on and hearing it all. And I don't mean awful in a bad way, it's just like it still does a good job of, I think, kind of mimicking that psychosis. As for the rest of the sound effects throughout the game, I think once again, they are incredibly well done. The sound design is fantastic, and so is the music. I really don't think from an audio standpoint there's a single thing where they did not do an exceptional job. This is once again a game that needs to be played with a pair of headphones, like good headphones. A lot of games will recommend headphones for optimal experience, but to really experience this game at all, you need to wear headphones while playing it. Let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is still predominantly a story-driven game with some action stuff going on. The puzzle solving has evolved slightly. You're not just trying to put together runes to open doors, though there is a bit of that. There's other things where like the world kind of changes around her, and you do puzzles involving that. None of them are overly complicated. I think the puzzles in this game are pretty simplistic, which I'm not gonna bitch and moan about. I'm just putting it out there. Then you've got the combat, which hasn't evolved in any way, shape, or form. It is still very much the combat from the first game. Yes, you have new enemies. Some of them have some new and pain in the ass attacks. But overall, I didn't feel like there was a huge leap in combat, which is fine because this isn't like a combat-focused game. I do think, though, that because Senua has some friends tagging along, they could have found some way to implement that in the combat gameplay. Like, they'll pop up in combat, and it'll be like a cool cinematic moment, but it's not really a gameplay moment. You don't have control of when they pop up or what they're doing once they have. There is no shortage of walking, just like in the first game, as I pointed out. There's a lot of walking about. The biggest change is when you fight the giants. I don't want to go into it to spoil anything, but I would say that is a new gameplay element that they added. Each of the giants has their own kind of thing that you're going through to defeat the giants. So I thought that was actually kind of a cool addition and does show some evolution in the gameplay. And they're not like wildly out of place mechanics. They fit very well in the storytelling, and they don't evolve the gameplay too much, but they do add a new layer to it, I would say. But it's not gonna like revolutionize the entire game. They also added more collectibles, I guess. You now have 2 sets of collectibles going on, basically. And the collectibles still are like storytelling, whether it's Norse myth or just discussing the land essentially in a mythological way. But then this one's gonna be kind of controls and gameplay. Sprinting. There were times where the sprinting didn't seem to respond, and I think it's a bit of gameplay and occasionally a bit of controls. I think they stop you from sprinting so that the game can load, but there were definitely times where it should have been allowing me to sprint due to like an action sequence, and it didn't. So that feels a little Controls-like, leading into, well, the controls. And apart from the sprinting, I think the controls work very well. Your camera control, your movement, those are all very smooth. The combat is responsive. When you're in combat, there weren't times where I was like, hey, I attacked and you didn't do it. It was just certain times where I was trying to sprint and the game was like, nope. Even though it was a moment where it's like, no, you need to let me sprint. Didn't destroy the game because overall I would say it's fairly easy. It's a very forgiving game. While you can and will get killed in combat if you're not paying attention, a lot of times you don't really die, you just get knocked down and you can get back up. There are some other action sequences though where, you know, you will die, but it was never like really a controls thing except for the few times it wouldn't let me sprint. But it's forgiving because it restarts you pretty close to where you were, so you never felt like you got totally fucked. And last but not least, especially in this game, let's get on to the graphics and visuals. One of the reasons they probably don't let you sprint at times is the visuals, because graphically this is a powerhouse game. This is a truly gorgeous game. I mean, the first one was outstanding, especially the characters, and that continues here. The world itself is stunning and the lighting is fantastic. I mean, vistas like you just wish you were there and could just sit there and stare at it in real life. But the characters themselves look fantastic. I mean, they looked wonderful in the first game, Senua. There was so much detail in her character, and it's here again. But this time, it's not just her character, it's the other characters around her as well. They all look amazing. The amount of detail in all of the character models is just wonderful. It's one of those things where you're like, yes, this is next gen. We need every game to look this good. Okay, needs a bit of a stretch, but it's one of those things where you see what's possible and you want more of that. But that's also true of the world around you. It's a beautiful world. They bring everything to life in just such a fantastic way. They put so much effort into the design of the world as well as the graphical fidelity of the world. All the small details that I love are in the characters. I wish there were ones that I could point out around the world, but I really never notice any where I'm like, oh, that one detail, it's fantastic. And we know I love little small weird details. They're ones that'll just get me. In this case, it's in the characters, whether it's like, oh, this dude hasn't shaved in a minute and you can really see it, stray hairs in their ponytails and stuff like that. But seriously, like even just like little wrinkles on their face, all the detail in the characters, just wow. Kind of hung up on that apparently. But let's talk about the motion capture and all of that, which was something that was kind of big in the first game and clearly still big in this game. It's great. It leads to fantastic animation. The performances lead to much more believable movements and visuals in the game. But then you've also got the enemies, which, oh man, the designs on them, like some of those enemies, like the Draugr, are creepy and gross, and I love it because, you know, they're supposed to be creepy and gross enemies. And the giants, oh my gosh, man. Visually, this game is one of those games where I generally feel like visuals don't necessarily need as much praise as some people will put on them, but this game, whoa, they really deserve it. Visually, it's an amazing game, like truly wonderful, just truly impressive. I could ramble on about the graphics some more, but I don't see the point in doing that. So we're just gonna get into the wrap up. And overall, I like this game, but it just felt like it didn't quite live up. I enjoyed it, I had a good time with it, but at the same time, I wasn't pulled into it the same way I was pulled into the first one. While the psychosis is there and it is persistent, it just didn't feel quite as gripping as in the first game. The story feels like you get a little rushed through it at times, and maybe I'm just complaining about something that would have felt like filler had they not done it the way they did, but it does feel a little rushed at times. Not that it's not a well-told story, it just feels like you're being moved through it quite quickly. Like, yeah, you have your companions and you get to learn a bit about them, but I wouldn't say I really know them in any great depth. So to recommend this is kind of a challenge. I do think it was good. I did have a good time with it. And if you played and enjoyed the first one, you're obviously going to want to, and I think you will enjoy this. But if you were to play this, I don't know that it would inspire you to go back and play the first. Okay, in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, have you ever played the sequel to a game first and it really didn't make you want to go and play the first? As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.